Hey Writer Rebels, do you want to know who taught me some lessons on how to be a professional author? The Backstreet Boys. Want to know how? Stay tuned. Hey there everyone, it's me, Scarlett Kol, young adult author, YouTuber, and storyteller, and today I am here to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is boy bands. So yes, I love boy bands. All the way from New Kids on the Block to One Direction, I have seen them all in concert, and I love going. But don't freak out, this is about writing. I will get to my point. I just really love boy bands. They're entertaining. You're always gonna have a good time when you go to a concert, and it is something that I just like their music. It's peppy and it's upbeat, and if you haven't figured it out, I'm a relatively peppy and upbeat person. So why am I talking about boy bands today? Well, I went to the DNA tour back in 2019. Yes, it's been a couple of years, but A, there hasn't been a whole lot of concerts recently, and two, this is actually a video based on a blog post that I did a while back, but I find that it still rings really true. And I recently saw on TikTok this Back in Sync thing with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC looking at doing some music together potentially, and I got very excited. So it brought all of these memories up about this fantastic concert. Even though I had seen Backstreet Boys, I think 3 times at this point, the DNA tour was very good. So I learned some things about being a writer from going to the DNA tour. What did I learn? Well, before we get into that, I did want to say thank you to everybody who keeps coming back to my channel. I really appreciate all of my subscribers and even those people who just want to pass through. However, if you do want to be a subscriber, make sure you're hitting that subscription bar and the notification bell below this video, and they will let you know every time I put in a new video, which is typically on Thursdays. If you're down there, you might as well hit that thumbs up button, as that lets YouTube know that this is something worth watching and that you would like to see more from me. So even if you are not a boy band fan, I still think that you would definitely get something out of these lessons that I learned from the Backstreet Boys concert. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is some solid advice in here as well. Number 1, figure out what you stand for and lean into it. So going to a Backstreet Boys concert is a little bit different than listening to them from home, where you can skip from track to track or, just pick out the ones that you particularly like. You're basically going to listen to their entire backlist in one sitting. And the one thing that I definitely noticed is the fact that a lot of the songs are very similar. And the reason for that is they definitely have a certain type of vibe. They are a band that you know what kind of music you're going to get from them. And they have been around for a really long time. I think at this point, they've been around for almost 30 years. That's a lot of music. And they keep putting out new records. So even though they were playing stuff from when they started back when they were in their teens to stuff that they just released on the radio last week, the songs had changed over time. They had developed different strengths. They had leaned into different things that they were doing, but all of the songs still had a very similar feel. And those people who really liked the songs back from the early 90s are still really going to like the songs that are coming out now and that they're still developing. Obviously, you're not going to like every single song, but generally they're going to have that same sort of vibe, even though it's grown and changed. And that's the same thing as being a professional writer. Although you do want to experiment and change and grow as a writer, once you have a readership that enjoys what you do, figure out what it is that your readership enjoys and lean into those things. Are you really good at particular themes? Do they really like certain things that you do with your writing? What are the things that keep your readers coming back for more? If you can figure out what it is that your readers love about you, you can continue to do that and take that and mold that and change that in different ways to keep them satisfied book after book after book. And they will keep coming back no matter whether you're writing about wolf shifters or mafia kings, or if you're writing something a little bit more off the beaten path. Obviously, I'm a paranormal writer, so those are my kinds of things. But find out what your readers love and give it to them. That's what's going to keep people coming back for more and keep you as an author 30, 40, and 50 years down the road. The second thing I learned at the Backstreet Boys concert is that too much of a good thing can be too much. As much as I said to find out what you represent to your readers and make sure that you are leaning into that and giving them what they want, it is another thing to be spoon feeding them the exact same book over and over again. And I have seen authors do this, ones that I have read before, where they've done really well and then this one book kind of breaks out and then they basically just write that same book over and over and over and over again. And it does actually get tiresome, and people are going to notice, especially in our binge society that we have right now. There's a lot of readers who will basically sit down and read an entire author's catalog. And if they're doing those sorts of things back to back to back, you may not notice because you're writing a different book every time, but they're going to notice if you line them all up. And just like going to the Backstreet Boys concert, you could tell which songs were off certain albums because they were definitely grouped together with too much of the same theme, too much of the same beat, and it actually got tiresome in some sections because it was almost a little bit too much of a good thing. So you do want to make sure that you aren't getting lazy with your readers and just relying on formulas. You are so much better than that. You are totally creative, and I have faith in you. There aren't a ton of authors that I have seen do this, but I do see it happen on occasion, and I think it would be really tempting to try and hit the same success that you've had before. But people will notice, and maybe you will be successful with writing the same formulaic book over and over and over again, but it doesn't mean that your readership doesn't notice. Number 3, your work has the opportunity of being timeless. And this was something that really resonated for me as a young adult author. For me, I get frustrated sometimes because, I am an adult. I am not a teenager. And as I get older, I worry about my audience and all of those sorts of things, of whether it's going to appeal to them. Well, I was standing in an arena with like 20,000 people, and we had everybody from, someone's grandma to someone's little girl, and they were all totally into the music. And what it is because it was something that resonated to everyone. It was fun, it was entertaining, and it didn't matter how old the audience was, they got into it. So you have to remember that even though you're applying to a specific audience, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the be-all end-all for you. You can appeal to other audiences down the road. Just because you've released a book right now and maybe it doesn't do so well, doesn't mean it's not going to be successful later, or that you're not going to have a consistent stream of readers. Nothing that we produce anymore is static. Back in the day, people would release books, they only came in paperback, and if the bookstore didn't take it or they took it off the shelves, it went out of print, and that was the end of it. In our world nowadays, things keep coming back. I'm sure you've seen the fashion and the music and all of that sort of thing. Nothing ever gets to die and perish anymore if you don't let it. So just because you don't necessarily have the audience that you want right now doesn't mean that you won't. And it doesn't mean that you won't appeal to another audience, or a book that you thought was a flop isn't going to be successful somewhere down the road. That a trend isn't going to come back and manage to pick up on it, or somebody, the right somebody or group of somebodies is really going to be into that. And all of a sudden you're going to be able to build that readership that you always wanted. So never give up on what you're doing, because your work is going to immortalize you in a way that you probably never even expected. Number 4, people just want to be entertained. One thing I learned from going to the Backstreet Boys concert is everybody there had a good time. They had some technical difficulties. No one cared. They did what they wanted to do. They had a great banter with the audience. They played stuff that people wanted to hear, and it was great. People want to be entertained. As authors, people want to read a good book with great characters, an interesting plot that's going to keep them turning pages. If it's not 100% perfect, the world's not going to end. They're still going to be able to enjoy that book. They're still going to want to read that story, and they can still love you as an author, even though it's not as polished or as perfect as something else that you would have out there. Don't deny the world your stories. Make sure that you're getting your stuff out there and that you're letting people read it, because they really just want to be entertained. And the final thing I learned at the Backstreet Boys concert is that I still think I'm in love with Nick Carter. Shh, don't tell my husband. Anyhow, that's all I've got. Those are the things that I learned from the Backstreet Boys about writing. So If you found this video entertaining, make sure you're hitting that thumbs up below this video to let YouTube know it's something worth watching. And if you want to check me out on a regular basis, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button below this video and the notification bell so YouTube can send you an email every time I put out new content. This obviously is a little bit different than most of my videos, but hopefully you still enjoyed it. And if you did, thank you so much for checking it out. I also have a lot of other videos on this channel, so if you are new here, do take a look around and see if there's anything that floats your boat. I have stuff about writing, I have stuff about publishing, and I also do writer vlogs usually on a monthly basis, so you can check those out as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and you guys have a lovely week.